Welcome to Lafayette Returns, a historic Rockford podcast released monthly, leading up to Lafayette Day at Rockford, Monday, July 28th, 2025. Each episode explores a new topic related to the Marquis de Lafayette's farewell tour of America in 1824 and 25. I'm your host, Lisa Landis-Blowers. This month, our very special guest is Kathleen Hood. Kathleen is the Lancaster and Western Chester County Planning Committee Coordinator. We're learning about the many events planned locally to trace Lafayette's footsteps on the exact dates and in the exact order of his farewell tour of America. Kathleen and I met on the grounds of historic Rockford on a beautiful, breezy, sunny day. We kicked off our conversation with some background to give us all a better understanding of who was Marquis de Lafayette.
The Marquis de Lafayette, who was born in France, is probably best known to Americans because he helped patriots win the Revolutionary War, and in doing so, literally became a rock star here in our country in the 17 and 1800s. He was born to a wealthy French military family in 1757, and he spent his early years in a castle in Chavignac. And we know this man as Lafayette or Marquis de Lafayette, but his official name that he was baptized with was Marie Joseph Paul Yves Roche Gilbert du Motier de la Lafayette. He joked later in his autobiography, he said, "It's not my fault. I was baptized like a Spaniard with the name of every conceivable saint who might offer me more protection in battle."
Kathleen, I read he lost his parents when he was quite young, his mother at the age of 12 and his father much earlier. Can you talk about that?
He was only 2 years old. His father was killed by a cannonball while he was fighting the 7 Years' War with Britain. It was at that time that Gilbert inherited the title Marquis de Lafayette and Lord of Chavignac. At 13, he joined the French King's Guard and was commissioned as an officer. At 14, he entered into an arranged marriage with Adrienne Noyer, the daughter of a French wealthy family, which was the custom of the day, even though he was so young. And so it happened when he was about 18, he happened to attend a dinner with the younger brother of the British King George III. And at that dinner, he heard stories of battles and Continental Army that was being formed. And at that dinner table, he was so captivated that he imagined going to America to fight with these patriots. He saw this as his chance to see real military action and avenge his father's death at the hands of the British. So Lafayette approached the new French king, Louis XVI, about crossing the ocean. The king flatly forbade Lafayette from going to America. So what did Lafayette do? Against the wishes of the king, against the wishes of his wife, against the wishes of his father-in-law, this 19-year-old wealthy marquis bought his own ship, La Victoire, and sailed to America to join the revolution.
I am learning so much, Kathleen. So where did he first arrive in America?
He landed at Charleston in 1777 in June, and from there he traveled to Philadelphia to volunteer for that Continental Army that he had heard about at the dinner with no combat experience at all. He was commissioned as a young general because of his wealth and title, and also was introduced to George Washington, who became his lifelong friend. Unfortunately, in his very first battle, the Battle of Brandywine, Lafayette displayed courage and bravery on the battlefield, but was wounded in his calf. Washington sent his very own surgeon to take care of Lafayette, and when Lafayette was taken to the hospital, General Washington told the doctors, "Treat him as if he were my son." Lafayette was the son Washington never had. Washington was the father that Lafayette never knew. And upon his recovery, Lafayette spent the very cold, brutal winter with Washington and his men at Valley Forge.
This is so interesting, Kathleen. I know he went on to fight in many battles, and he was there at the Siege of Yorktown, where he helped The forces win the surrender of a large British army at Yorktown, Virginia, the last major battle of the war. Kathleen, what did he do after the war?
Well, Lisa, you might assume that Lafayette returned to France and lived a comfortable life of an aristocrat. Wrong. When Lafayette returned home, he became commander of the French National Guard. And with the help of Thomas Jefferson, he actually wrote a French Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen. And that was based on our American Declaration of Independence. This document that they wrote together actually served as a catalyst that helped launch the French Revolution. The situation in France was deteriorating, so Lafayette left France to escape the radical revolutionaries. Tragically, he was arrested and became a political prisoner for 5 years in Austria and Prussia until Napoleon Bonaparte finally arranged for his release in 1797. His wife died in 1807, and he remained living quietly at his estate called Lagrange. Many influential people used to visit him there. He used to write letters, especially to Jefferson, and exchange gifts like he had done previously with Washington when he was alive. And in 1824, a special invitation arrived. President James Monroe invited the Marquis de Lafayette, as the last surviving general of the Revolutionary War, to visit the United States for 3 months as what was called the official guest of the nation. And guess what? The Lafayette mania began. His visit ended up lasting 13 months because communities like ours throughout the 24 states he visited were clamoring to pay homage to this French-American hero. He kept a hectic pace during that journey, visiting various communities. They hosted balls and parades and dinners and celebratory events and frenetic welcomes by thousands and thousands of admirers welcoming him with gratitude, affection in individual towns and villages and cities across the nation.
You know, as you were sharing his history, I was just thinking that maybe people who have not studied his history, they would know him as the guy that sings the very challenging patter rap song in Hamilton.
That's why he's so well known.
So how did the idea to celebrate this tour come about? I mean, this is huge. This is like huge. Not just in Lancaster and Chester counties. Right. This is across the nation.
Exactly.
So exciting.
Well, the bicentennial is actually the brainchild of the nonprofit called American Friends of Lafayette, and their goal was to commemorate this incredible anniversary of his farewell tour. So what they did, they reached out to individual communities like ours and identified coordinators who then in turn assembled planning committees. Hundreds of events are being planned nationwide to trace the farewell tour on the exact dates and in the exact order in the 24 states that Lafayette visited.
It's so amazing. So give us an idea of what is planned in Lancaster and Western Chester counties.
Well, believe it or not, our planning committee has been working for over the past 3 years to develop our calendar event. In the schedule that we've devised, we are going to be walking in the footprints left by Lafayette here in our area in 1825, mirroring where he went, what he did, with whom he met while visiting our area. So our plans involve before July 27th and during July 27th, 8th, and 9th. Before July 27th, we have Marquee Mondays, Lafayette webinars that will be free via Zoom, Lafayette Preview that will take place at the Sainer Ellicott von Hess building in Lancaster, Lafayette speakers at both Lancaster History and Rockford, a Lafayette exhibit that will run at Rockford from April through October, and Lafayette walking history tours. And believe it or not, our reenactor called me one day and he said, "Kathleen, I'm a bit of a character. And I said, well, aren't we all? He said, no, I love baseball. Do you think I, as Lafayette, could throw out the first pitch at a Barnstormers game? So the answer was yes. And the Barnstormers are going to host a Lafayette night at the Barnstormers. So all of those events will take place before our commemoration. And then once we get to July 27th, we're going to kick off with a breakfast with Lafayette at a location 1 mile west of the old tavern where he actually met for breakfast. We're going to parade him through Parksburg by horse and carriage. From there, we transport him up to historic White Chimneys for Lafayette tea. He then travels west, like he did in 1825, to the Lafayette Tower Park. This park was part of what I think was a farmer's field, where thousands and thousands and thousands of people poured out. And at that location, next year, we're going to have a Lafayette ceremony and troop muster. That afternoon, we're not done. We have a Lafayette dinner and ball that will be taking place with period dancing and dress for those who would like to dress up. The following day, Lafayette did a lot of visiting in Lancaster. He visited a lot of important people, but we are moving all of those visits out to historic Rockford, and we will be hosting a Lafayette Day there with an encampment, with reenactment of the various visits he made, food, crafts, all kinds of things will be happening in this beautiful setting. That evening, we're back in Lancaster for an evening with Lafayette musicals. It used to be a performance. I've changed it to extravaganza.
It will be.
We have all kinds of performers in that, including some very well-known, nationally known performers that we will be divulging between now and next summer. And the very last day, July 29th, we'll be heading south on 272 to have a closing ceremony and a grand send-off at the Drew Moore Estate. This location is very close to where he stopped for lunch on his way south to Port Deposit in Baltimore. And of course, Lafayette, our reenactor, of course, will be present at all of these events. So we're incredibly exciting about this.
I can't wait to meet him. I wonder if I would happen to interview him, what he would think of my microphones and our cell phones.
Exactly.
It's going to be new to him.
It would be totally new, absolutely new, and you're going to get a feel for that during our extravaganza when he is thrust onto a stage and asked to talk about his life and legacy.
I'm curious, how was he welcomed in Lancaster? What kind of fanfare did he receive compared to other parts of the country?
Lisa, the welcome that Lafayette received in Lancaster was absolutely phenomenal. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people poured out to pay homage to this hero. And it was interesting because the Secretary of Lafayette was keeping notes during the journey that he and Lafayette's son, George Washington Lafayette, were on. And in the notes for the Lancaster visit, Lavoisier, the secretary, made the comment that he wasn't going to go into a lot of specifics, but he would clearly say that the welcome he received in Lancaster County rivaled any of the visits they made to any of the American cities in the United States at that time. Quite accommodation for Lancaster and the way they rolled out the welcome carpet for this incredible man.
So proud of our Lancaster ancestors. And I have ancestors that go back to that time period, so I'm hoping they were there and that they were welcoming.
Oh, I agree. And it would be so nice to have people whose families, in fact, were there during 1825, during the visit of Lafayette, to share with us their individual stories. We would love to hear family history that may have been passed down about Lafayette's visit to Lancaster County.
One thing I know we will talk about on future podcasts is how the men who fought in the Revolutionary War came out and they put on or attempted to put on their Revolutionary War uniforms. The men would have been in their 20s when they were fighting, most likely, and now in their 70s. This was just so important to them that they welcomed Lafayette, and they knew what a hero he was.
Absolutely. And at the Groves Park, which is now Lafayette Tower Park, Lafayette Fire Company, there were veterans, there were soldiers, there were students, there were kids, there were people on horseback, general public, musicians. The outpouring was absolutely inspiring. And he must have been so enthralled with the welcome he received in all of these communities. And again, he was only going to stay 3 months and ended up staying 13. And with these kinds of welcomes, I can understand why he wanted to continue his incredible journey.
As you study and learn about Lafayette, is there anything that has surprised you?
Definitely, Lisa. Of all the information I studied about Lafayette, I was most impressed with the fact that this man, who was born into nobility and wealth, was a staunch advocate of human rights. I never knew that. He was an advocate for voting rights, religious freedom, women's rights, equal rights. And at a time when slavery was an accepted practice throughout most of the world, he was a staunch abolitionist who encouraged others, including Washington, to free their slaves. Lafayette dedicated his entire life to fighting for liberty, equality, freedom, instead of living a quieter, more secluded life of that a French aristocrat might live. And in my opinion, the world needs more heroes like the Marquis de Lafayette today.
I was going to ask you, why should we celebrate Lafayette? But I think you just answered that question.
Absolutely. It's only fitting that the world continues to revere him as not only a war hero, but also a human rights advocate. And he's certainly worthier of our honor, respect, and admiration even today. I love this quote that I found. I wanted to share with you. It was by the founder of the Lafayette Trail program. And this is a program where they erect signs saying that Lafayette had visited a certain location. And he was talking about how Lafayette's legacy can affect Americans and why he's so important. And he said, you can think of Lafayette's legacy as a place for a gentleman from France that's going to be reassuring the American people that all they have, despite all their divisions, is something to be cherished, to be proud of, and unique in the world. Lafayette's legacy in this way is very significant to this day. I think it can help all Americans know who we are.
And I'm thinking, to pull all of these events off, you're going to need some volunteers. And I'm wondering, too, if you need donations.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you go to the website, you can make a donation. There's a donation link. So it's very important, if you're making a donation, to indicate in the comment section of the website that you'll be directed to indicate WCC Lancaster or just Lancaster, so that they know that that donation is coming to our local festivities. And if you're interested in volunteering, by all means, go to the website, send us an email, and let us know that you're interested, and we'll follow up with you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Once again, Kathleen Hood, the Lancaster and Western Chester County Planning Committee Coordinator. Tune in next month for a brand new episode. This time we talk French cuisine with Cedric Barberet of Barberet Bistro and Bakery in Lancaster. For more information on Rockford's Lafayette Day, go to historicrockford.org/special-events. For information on what's happening across Lancaster and Western Chester counties, go to Lafayette200pa.org. I'm Lisa Landis-Blowers. Thanks so much for listening.